Hey everybody, thanks for joining us today. I'm Darren with Top Key. We have a really incredible session lined up for you, one that really I think gets to the core of something that we talk with a lot of property managers about, just what separates the growing ones, the ones that are kind of maybe stuck, they're growing slower than they would from the ones that are really, really scalable. I talk with operators every day who are adding properties, teams, expanding into new markets, but there's just so much chaos behind the scenes. And when you're growing, that doesn't just get better on its own. You really have to think about things and build things in the right way. Finances slip, reporting gets harder, tasks fall through the cracks, and then ultimately you pay the price in terms of more stress, lower valuations, less profit. So really excited about this session that we have here with the Feather PMS guys. So joining us, I'll do a real quick intro, but then I'm going to toss it to you because I know you have a lot of really good content and I want to make sure we get to it. We have Quinn Foster, CEO and co-founder of Feather, former CRO of StayDuvet. Taylor Gates, co-founder of Feather, former CEO of StayDuvet. And then Mac Hill, head of growth and client success at Feather. We'll toss it over to you in a sec. Real quick housekeeping. Just want to encourage everybody, ask questions throughout. We will have time at the end to get to those, but really just want to encourage people to ask questions throughout as they pop into your mind. We'll get to as many of these questions as you can. There's a Q&A button in the bottom. And if we can't get to this, we'll send out the recording. We'll connect you with the guys to be able to answer those a little bit later on. But yeah, with that in mind, Quinn, I want to turn it over to you.
Well, I appreciate you handing it over to me. I might hand it right back over to Mac. Mac is going to do a great job of kind of setting the stage for today's presentation. And then I think Taylor and I really kind of get in the nuts and bolts of the topic today.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Appreciate that, Quinn. And, a little bit of a ring around the rosy here, but, kind of our intent with anything we put out is to lead with massive value, make sure folks have things that they're taking away and are implementable in their business. And no two better to do that than Taylor and Quinn here. A bit of an overview of what we'll be covering today. You guys are probably wondering, who are these guys and why should I be listening to them? They've got a pretty epic story. And with that, some things that they learned that they know will make a huge impact if you're ever looking to make an exit with your short-term or vacation rental management company down the line, how you should be starting to think about those things. And then Taylor has developed an incredible framework for how you're going to scale and implement that in a repeatable fashion to grow your business really successfully in the right way. And then a lot of things that we do at Feather, Quinn can dive into like how we're dialing in those financials with tasks and how we're starting to think about leveraging Top Key in a combination with this to really streamline and optimize your business in a big way. And then as Darren mentioned, we want to make sure we're saving some time at the end to answer any questions that our audience has. So as you guys are listening to Quinn and Taylor deliver a lot of this session, type your comments. Darren and I are going to be keeping an eye on the webinar chat and questions module. So don't be shy. We'll save some time at the end. And with that, let's get into maybe some introductions in that StayDuvet story. How about it, boys?
Let's do it.
Do it. Well, yeah. First off, thank you all for being here and listening. I want to start this off because I just feel like we all need to hear it. Property management is hard. So, there's a reason people need property managers or hosts, right? Because it's not easy, and owners want to act like they know everything. But why do they hire you if they did? But I just want to say you're not alone in feeling, crazy at times because this can feel like, you're not like at a hotel or there are a bunch of people all the time. You're on your own, you're not at the properties. So we've felt a lot of that. And the fact that you're even here listening to me speak and Quinn, Mac, and all of us just shows how much you care about being a great operator in the industry. And our goal today, kind of like Mac mentioned, is just for you to walk away with at least like one positive thing that would impact your business. And after we did have this, very blessed exit, we just feel that we spent millions of dollars trying everything. Like we would kind of like really just throw things at the wall and see if it stick because we didn't really have anything to go off of. So we really learned a lot. We tried a little bit of everything, and we want to share that with everybody because we genuinely feel we need good operators out there in this industry. So we stop getting hit and shut down by the ones that are doing it wrong, and ruining it for the rest of us. So anyways, just want to say again, thank you for spending your afternoon with us. And thanks for Top Key for having us. We actually met Jonathan and Brian back in the day, and we sat down. We were at like a 100 Collection Summit. We sat down and we had just talked a lot about how we really care about the people in this industry, and how it's not just about like the product that we're trying to sell or do. It's about like actually giving like, genuine tools and benefits that people can use to improve their businesses. So we're really honored, and we align. Our ethos with Top Key is so amazingly aligned. So we feel really great to be or honored to be included on a webinar today, and hopefully we can do some more in the future. But the story of StayDuvet, yeah, we started in StayDuvet technically started 2015. We did start hosting around 2013, but we were the market maker for downtown Charleston, South Carolina. Our mission was to bring the hotel experience to the home. And we saw that the industry really was lacking in quality control standards. So that's what we saw as the opportunity for vacation rentals. We also fought to legalize short-term rentals in our city back in April of 2018. And there were talks of them shutting them down entirely. And wow, did we not sleep well during that time. And because we focused on prioritizing our neighbors and our community as a whole, we were able to ensure short-term rentals are allowed and accepted in our city today. So just, we did get a lot of experience with that. So if anyone ever is going through anything like that, all of us are happy to get on a call with you and just kind of see how we can be helpful. We did help another feather client of ours that had the same issue, and it ended up favoring him by just having these good little things to bring to like the local mayor and as good key points for our industry. But we weren't just renting homes, right? We were crafting standout guest experiences. That was StayDuvet's, vision. We focused on some key differences that were like, curating guest guides, which was really cool, which I'll get into later. In-house concierge service. We wanted to really have, a true concierge service. The clean duvet guarantee. We're called duvet because everybody, when they go to a hotel, is like, is the duvet clean? And we were like, we're going to make sure it is. Like, we have a clean duvet guarantee. Everything's, professionally laundered, all white, taken care of. So we just thought that was a cool marketing thing. And then also delivering that hotel level hospitality in one-of-a-kind homes. We all know is so hard because every house is different. So with that required us to, figure out ways to scale that, let's just say. But we did scale to over 350 homes under management. We achieved a $3.2 million EBITDA at our peak with an 18% margin. And we even actually at one point had that at 24%. And we achieved that without a bunch of excessive homeowner or guest fees, which is pretty awesome. We grew between 40 to 82 homes per year. So 40 on our worst year, 82 at our highest, all organically through word of mouth. No outbound sales. Homeowners just came to us because, they heard we delivered. And our growth was driven by reputation, results, and retention. We managed homes in downtown Charleston, North Charleston, Mount Pleasant, Isle of Palms, Folly Beach, Kiowa Island, and Seabrook Island. So that's kind of like the coastal, seacoast islands, we like to call them. And then built out full in-house ops. So we had a professional laundry facility, housekeeping. You got to make sure those duvets are clean, like we talked about. 24/7 guest services. The in-house maintenance was huge for us because I'm sure y'all are dealing with it. We saw a post-COVID price gouging happening for all the trades. So we knew that bringing about 70-something% of those trades we could bring in-house that were insured, like basic things like plunging a toilet or augering one, right? And by doing that and incentivizing our team to get a little bit of that pie, we were able to bring those costs down significantly for owners. So I'll kind of get into that later as well. And then those scalable SOPs to keep quality tight as we grew. Our other partners on this call right now started StayDuvet with, his name's Silas. We at the time, just what was available to us, there's no good PMSs at all. We built our own for that reason because we feel that no matter what it is you're using, the real goal is our elevated guest experience, homeowner transparency and retention, and then operational excellence through tasks, right? Those are the key things that matter, period. And you have to make sure all that is really, truly in one spot to get the most out of it, right? So us being like, business driven, not just like, here's a bunch of tools. We were just like focusing on that because at the end, those are the results we wanted so that we could continue to be a great company. And that's what led us to building Feather PMS, which StayDuvet actually still uses today, which is pretty cool. It's been great. And so the exit for us, we we landed in the top 1% of vacational operators nationwide. Airbnb had told us like we were also one of the top, which is really cool. And we were known most for our guest experience. That's where we started getting a lot of credit, especially the conferences. No one was really talking about the guests. They were talking about homeowners, right? Because it was about getting properties. And we really, really cared about like the guests because we feel they're the customer, the person spending money. You don't have the guests, the homeowners aren't making the money. But we believe our methodology is what helped us really excel, which I'll get into later with the peer system, which is where I'll spend the most time talking. But for now, I'll switch over to Quinn so he can tell you a few of the key takeaways that we want to make sure is super tight for M&A. There's so many things to go through, but we felt these were really crucial, and we got a lot of compliments for it.
Definitely. Appreciate the handoff, Taylor. Again, I'm Quinn. I'm the CEO of Feather, former CRO at StayDuvet. And we're really excited to tell you guys a little bit about how we would always keep our finger on the pulse when it came to all of our accounting, expense tracking, and financial needs at Duvet. It really empowered us to be nimble with quick decision making, being able to lean into fast pro forma generation in order to dial in not only the income in which that a homeowner could expect whenever they were thinking of onboarding either a new property or inquiring about our management services, but it also allowed us to really be able to dial in the expenses that they could assume or expect while owning a short-term rental. So I think the approach that we would always instill at Duvet is basically if there's an expense, there's a task that's tied to it. And whenever you see through this presentation how we would marry all of our expenses by way of task into our property management system, it allowed us to not only, again, lean into faster homeowner acquisition, but it would also, and for everybody that's on this call today, it should really empower people to lean into any kind of investments you're making into your business, short-term or long-term, that might be positioning yourself for long-term scalability, or somebody who's thinking even longer term about a potential acquisition of their business. So we'll go over how we would instill upon our team specifically how every task had an expense, making sure that you're aware of all the task inefficiencies that ultimately lead to anywhere from 2 to 5% of spillage for any average property management company in North America. Making sure you're not working off of some sort of Franken system or duct taping multiple systems together in order to marry your income and your expenses. And then the different calibers of tasks that we would manage at Duvet: manual tasks, auto tasks, repeat tasks, and onboarding tasks. Some of those sound kind of similar, but a little bit later on in the presentation, I'll be able to break down for everybody the key differences between all of those and how you can apply them to your business. As far as systematic hospitality, Taylor, I know that you have a great peer system that you're going to be introducing here shortly, something that you were able to build through our time at Duvet, but we're really looking forward to you being able to marry the hotel experience and really bringing it to the home. And then the reputation. I know that was a big thing that Taylor was our biggest advocate on our team for, having come from a hospitality background. Your reputation is certainly everything, not only within your market, but within this industry as a whole. And that reputation is that Taylor was able to really guide us to make sure that we held as the upper echelon of our totem pole. The reputation is what empowered us to scale our business to as big as it got, with a $0 sales and marketing budget. So I'm really excited for Taylor to explain this in the next slide.
Thanks, man. Yeah, so this peer system, this is gonna be a long one, but I think we'll get a lot of good snippets out of it. And I can kind of ask questions between each peer, or at the end, kind of just see how it goes. But as a vacational manager or someone running any business, you're always thinking like, what am I doing today that's most important? Like, how do I prioritize my day, right? And I feel like this framework's really helpful, because if you spend like months just focusing on experience, then product empowerment and reputation starts to drop, right? And you need to like constantly bounce. As a business owner, you start with product, and then you go to experience, and then when it starts to grow, you go to empowerment. And then once you've got a good team that can take good care of the product and experience, you work into reputation, and that's when you really start marketing. We all know so many businesses that build a product and just go straight to reputation, and they don't care about the experience. They don't they haven't like even tried it themselves, and they're not empowering their team to really take care of the product and make the experience better for their customers. So this is kind of a hospitality in a nutshell, right? We're a people business. So it's really, I felt this was a great framework that I wanted to create. So I call it working with your peers because I just thought that was cute. But ideally, these peers are the things that you do it in order. And at the end, you're asking yourself, whether you want scale or success, which I'll get into as well. So right off the bat, product. So this is the home and the homeowner, right? So what are we offering? And is it truly great? Heads and beds is a low bar. We wanted to create properties that felt designed for hospitality. So here's some examples. We made sure seating and dining match sleeping capacity, right? Nothing worse than a 10-person home with a dining table that seats 4 or only 4 people can watch a movie together. The product we are selling that is different from hotels is privacy and togetherness, right? That's what part of the product of differentiation for vacational industry is, right? King beds became standard for us. We made sure everybody was doing king beds because they photograph better, they sleep, sleep better, they sell better. And if you can't fit a king bed, well, replace those fulls with queens or do 2 twins if you can. That was actually a big deal for us to have a good marketable product. Invest in sleep quality. Premium mattresses, make sure you got those blackout curtains, feel like spend night, have like a temperature control of some sort, whether it's a fan, whatever it is, if you need white noise. A third of a guest stay's value is in the bed. And when you guys are in I'll get into later too, but the value rating on Airbnb, that's one of those things that you could say is undervalued. In-suite bathrooms were a priority wherever possible, right? Especially in multi-bedroom homes. We would have properties that were 3-bed, 1-bath that would not do nearly as well as a 2-bed, 2-bath. So sometimes people think heads and beds. That's not really necessarily the case all the time. We prioritize pet-friendly options and parking because that's what guests actually search for. But we made that complimentary. And I'm sure some of you homeowners out there want to charge more. But I guarantee you, if you pitch to this, like a 5-star review is worth more than $20 or $100 fee. You should argue that with the owners all day because I know they'd be paying $100 per 5-star review if they could, right? So that's something to really keep in the back of your mind is making sure they're leading with value. The first impression of the product is good, and immediately starting to feed them. We were thoughtful about launching homes the right way. We didn't rush to get homes live. This is huge. We even built an onboarding wizard in Feather to ensure the onboarding process was so smooth that we would get 5-star reviews. Those first impressions and those first reviews are what we call digital gold, right? Never launch until you're truly ready to deliver excellence. Otherwise, you're likely to not hit your goals. And, if you launch a property and you get a bad review, you got to start all over just because the owner's like, get it live. You didn't have the right photos, didn't have it onboarded properly, and the experience wasn't good. Well, I'll tell you, your team and your revenue manager is going to thank you if you do that, right? Also ensure owners reinvest back into the property every year, using tax write-offs to keep properties premium and hit revenue goals and expectations. You have to proactively show what properties in your portfolio are your top performers if the location is similar and if they can just update the home. You always want to do this before the holiday mentality kicks in. So usually around November 10th is what we found to be the best kind of time because once people get into holiday, they're like, I got to worry about end of the year and I'm spending a lot of money on my family. So it's November 10th, kind of around there is a good time to do that. But it also, here's what it does. It puts the ball in their court. How many times in the year they're looking at what their revenue is. And most of the time we found it's because the product wasn't great or they're using owner blocks, so all of these things matter. And for them to know about those tax benefits, 95% of the owners, maybe more, didn't even know about these tax benefits. Their CPAs didn't even tell them. So, and now with today, we even have more for them technically for the industry. A huge part of our success came from maximizing those existing homes, not just adding more. And something that I think is really important for the industry to be talking about right now is let's not focus on just getting more properties and saturating the market. Let's focus on improving the properties so that people want to keep coming back to our industry rather than hotels, right? That's huge, right? The product that you have in Charleston, you have a good stay with StayDuvet, and then they go to Colorado to hang out with Darren. Like, he's like, I got good places too. They're going to do it again to the third person. But if they go to somebody else and they have there's a bad product, bad experience, they might go back to hotels, right? So anyways, the pro tip here is always be refining the product. A better house equals better reviews equals better RevPAR, better margin, and better ROI. Also remember that not every guest or not every owner is the right partner. The best partnerships happen when the owners truly invest, and it's not a quick cash grab. They have to understand this takes time. The algorithms on OTAs alone take time, and that's it's just crucial that the product, we don't own the product, right? So that's the most frustrating thing that we have. Like hotels have a budget for how to improve the couch if it needs replacing or whatever. We don't have that, so we're always asking these owners. So having a good owner who treats like a partner and cares about that is the difference of a great product. Any questions about product before I move on to experience, or should I keep flowing?
Doing a great job, man.
Okay, cool. Very good, cool. Experience. So I like to say the guest worked for this experience, right? So if you work hard too, right? We're all here working. What do you want a great experience, right? That's how I want to reframe it. What does the guest feel before, during, and after the stay? That's what matters. So the guest journey starts before they even book, right? We made mistakes of just not looking at like what it was like on their side, because we got so dealt with all the daily noise, right? So it's really important to remind yourself to constantly look what it's like to be in that journey, in their shoes. Check those listings, navigate that checkout process, booking instructions, house rules. Check your team's tone, like how they're, a lot of people are just getting messages, not on the phone. And some people don't know how to type with tone, right? That's why we invented emojis, I guess. But avoid those automated canned responses. Quinn and I got rid of those like a couple years ago, and it made a big difference on our conversion. It's about like making things feel conversational and as if they're talking to an individual. That's crucial. And then also just be hospitable, right? Like try to like not just make everything sound transactional when you're talking. Like try to like ask them how they're doing and stuff like that. And what else are they coming to do in Charleston? Like ask some questions about them. Everybody likes that. We built a guest experience checklist focused on the senses, right? So we always said in the inspection, right? When you're like, oh my God, I got so many inspections today. It's a peak weekend. You want to focus on what they're touching, seeing, smelling, and hearing, right? Just their senses. So if it's a turnover, those are the things you have to prioritize. Look at everything on your inspection checklist and move all that to the top for a turnover checklist. Everything else that's not a turnover, do what's called a deeper checklist and get through like your kitchen audits and your other stuff, the kind of the deeper, more like devil in the details stuff, because we all know that sometimes it is impossible to do that perfect. So as long as you do those touch points, you will have great guest experience. Like you'll hit it more often. We said this often, treat every stay like it could be someone's last vacation with a loved one, and you'll see hospitality differently when you do that, especially with your team. Kind of talked about bed comfort, but this really is a non-negotiable. If someone has a bad night's sleep, they're going to wake up, and who are they going to lash out at? Probably our team, right? So really the bed is important, okay? So really important on that. Itineraries built for different personas. So during COVID, we noticed everybody was raising the rates, and we're like, oh man, that communication, cleanliness, check-in value, all these different things. And on Airbnb, when people leave reviews, that value one was weird to us because we're like, it's kind of like, what is value? Like, what do you mean by that? Do you feel like you value what you paid for, I guess? But then we thought about it and we're like, oh, you know what everyone values more than anything is saving time, right? So we went out of our way, we built a tool inside Feather, and this is definitely a differentiator we have. It's so cool, is we ask people why they're coming to Charleston. And if they say girls trip, then we would have a pre-made itinerary for them for their whole stay that we would update basically every like 3 to 6 months. And this would recommend local places. But what's so great is as the booker, right? If I book a vacation for all of us, the pressure's on me, right? I'm the guy who has to make sure we're hitting all the marks. So for me to relieve that pressure as a booker is a huge conversion tool, but it's also just so great because, you're immediately giving value to them. You're saving them time of like figuring out where to go. All the noise online they got to sift through. You just save them hours and hours as a first impression. When we added this, we used to get 1 out of every 10 reviews written. We started getting 1 out of every 3 or 4 reviews written. That was a massive difference, getting guest favorite badges and all that. Those little things make a difference. But like getting back into the human element and the psychology of it is when you're starting to have these personal connections with people, they then, if they walk into a unit and there happens to be a bug upside down, even though it means we sprayed, but it just happened to get in between inspection, the difference is this. Oh, hey, I just want to let you know that there's a bug on the ground compared to, I want a whole night's back. It's because you've invested in the relationship with them proactively. You've let them know that you care about them and you're trying to give them value before they even check in. that is the difference that excites them about staying with you. And that is the difference of why they want to come back, because that's the stuff they remember more than where they stay, right? And we would do stuff even for like hospital visits. We had a hospital here in Charleston called MUSC, and we knew people were just having like horrible time, and we create itineraries to get like food from local chefs and catered food into the hospital for them. Like just stuff like that really just made their day. Some of our best reviews written have come from those moments. We'd also ask for reviews 4 hours after checkout with a soft, caring tone and a private feedback option. We found that if you waited like too longer, that people are most likely to write reviews while they're traveling, because they're kind of still like coming out of it, but they're like they just had a good time usually, and they're just like still in the midst of that. The next day they're back at work, they're back with their kids. It's just they're not as likely going to write a review. So we found the 4 hour mark was perfect because it's not too early where like they're checking out and then they're like, oh, you're already asking me to do something. So that kind of 3 p.m. time period, our checkout's 11 a.m. The 3 p.m. Time period we found to get the most reviews written. And then also, use text, not email as much. Not all guests check email on vacation. Obviously like Airbnb, they'll check the Airbnb app because the technology is good. But, also make sure those automations are short, mobile friendly. And if you have to give all this information, make that a clickable link. Do not just put it into, we did that for like a couple of years. And we were just like, we got to stop this. It's just too much reading. And that really helped as well. We used to also, this is probably the best pro tip I could take for the experience pillar for us. We used to celebrate 5-star reviews and stress over anything below 4 stars. But the most valuable insights were hiding in plain sight inside of those 4 and 5-star reviews. So guests would publicly praise us, then privately mention small issues like a squeaky bed or confusing Wi-Fi instructions or something like that. But the thing is, they were all preventable. We went back and we looked at all of the 5 and 4-star reviews, or just a ton of them, a big amount of them, and we saw that like all the 1, 2, 3-star reviews we got could have been avoided had we just read the private feedback. So in Feather, we built a tool where you can like go in the review module, you can respond to reviews and stuff, but then create a task from the review, right? That then puts into action with that guest reservation, everything, to then create accountability and then to be able to immediately ensure that gets done before you get somebody who isn't reasonable, might be having a bad day, and they're the person to leave the 1-star review, right? So, I want to say this too, like, remember now, don't automate to remove yourself. Automate to enhance the human experience. The most valuable currency in the world is time for people. So giving your time and presence to someone actually has the most impact. Teams typically default to refunds, which we all see, but that is the easy way, right? True loyalty doesn't come from refunds. It comes from the empathy and creative recovery, right? A heartfelt apology, a thoughtful gesture, a surprise upgrade or local experience. And these actions show that you care about the relationship and it's not just the transaction, right? So any questions about experience before I move on to empowerment?
Nailed it.
Okay. So now keep in mind, startup businesses, product experience. You have a product at home, get into the experience. You're small, right? As you grow, in order to grow, you have to start empowering other people to do what you do and care about it as if they owned it. So this becomes the next step, right? So crucial. We always use this analogy of like rowing a boat together at Duvet. So just kind of have a little bit of terminology on that. But yeah, so are we creating a team that thinks, solves, and owns outcomes? That's a lot of what I want you to ask yourself. We coach our team to go from rowers, right, just executing, to coxswains, which is, the person who helps steer the boat with the team. The goal wasn't to micromanage. It was to teach decision-making in those gray areas. So we found that having a bunch of SOPs was great, but sometimes there'd be things that if you have too many SOPs, then they're like, oh, everything's black and white, where they're afraid to make a decision that would be the best decision to be made in that moment, that they have the ability to do so, but they need the permission from leadership, right? So what we did with Feather that was also really helpful is we would track who created tasks and completed tasks. Like if you have someone on the team just creating tasks all the time, or you have someone on the team just completing tasks, who are you going to value more? Well, I probably am going to value the person completing them because at the end of the day, that's the result. But the creating is very valuable too. But you're definitely going to value somebody who's creating and completing the task, right? You're going to be like, that person's awesome. I'm empowering them. And I want to make sure they're getting incentivized, right? So, empowering them is being like, we had a $300 rule where anything under $300, you could basically get, anything repaired under $300 without the owner's approval. And that really helped. And we started seeing a lot of good delegation from that. And the profit sharing, like like I just kind of brought up earlier about where somebody does like plunge the toilet and you kind of bring that house, like real basic things, you save the owner on like those bigger outsource fees. You can just do in Feather, we built like a little profit share model where it's like these are the things that we're allowed to do, and we want to keep the prices the same. So if we did a ceiling fan, then the ceiling fan is like the same price for all the properties because it's just a ceiling fan. But then the owners aren't getting charged differently and all that. But this was a way we were able to take that money made and then put it into the team's pocket. So what does that do? They're not waiting a day or two for something to get done. They're like, I'm going to do it right now. And then they're learning new skills and they're able to deliver a better guest experience. And then also like, you need to encourage every team member to own guest happiness, right? They're in hospitality. So it's not just their job description. Like even the maintenance person needs to be super hospitable and kind and have those soft skills. And then lastly, with the kind of the pro tip with empowerment isn't just delegation, right? It's trusting people to think like an owner, but remember to remind your team that they get to live a life, and this sounds corny, but this is so true, is remember that they get to live a life of service and taking care of others. And that is a very beautiful life. And we'll continue to have more and more value in the way our world is shaping now. Because hospitality is the customer's reward for all their hard work, right? And what's the point of working hard and doing what we do in society if we don't get to celebrate life with the ones we love? We get the privilege in hospitality to be the one to give them that reward, and that truly means something. So your team needs to hear that, right? It's also one of the things they need to remember is, unlike hotels, we don't get to see our guests daily. We usually only see our guests in person when something goes wrong. So this is a flaw in our business, period. That makes the human connection piece harder to achieve. So for that reason, it's so important to add additional human element wherever you can, because it's not just great for the guests, but it empowers your team. People will subconsciously choose to work in the hospitality industry because they desire human connection. So make sure your team is getting, that reward of giving and connecting with others. And that really is on leadership to accomplish that. So we got some questions in here I was going to kind of pivot to. Let's see here.
Yeah, we had one, Taylor. I think it's more in general about, warning signs with duvet and scaling, and then what you might fix earlier if you were starting again. I don't know if that takes you too out of the zone with the track you're on. Want to save that one towards the end because that seems fairly meaty. But I'll defer to you on that.
Yeah, I'll get to that at the end. It might be better I'll get through reputation and scale, and then we can get to that.
I think we got a couple more slides here.
Try to answer some of those questions as well.
Cool. Yeah, true.
Yeah,
bear with me here. So the reputation piece, like, what do people say about us when we're not in the room, right? I think this is important, right? So, it's about, create such memorable stays that guests become your most powerful marketing channel. We have so many guests that were like, God, the person was so annoying, but then they like word of mouth us, and we're just like, these guys are great. They took care of me, right? And it's those little moments you get these amazing advocates, and they come back, and some of those become homeowners too, right? Maintain those standards so high that your worst property still exceeds those guest expectations. We had owners literally begging us for years to take their property into our portfolio, which gave us ammunition to make sure they followed our standards, and they gave us a good product to start with, right? We didn't just focus on online reviews; we focused on community perception. So, we actually every 2 weeks we paid people to walk up and down Spring and Cannon Street to clean the streets. We did this for like 3 years, at least. It's been 3 years. And that was just one way to give back, because all this trash is Charleston has an area where short-term rentals are concentrated to, but we didn't have to do that, but we felt like that is what you should do. We're a successful, large growing business. We should make sure we're not negatively impacting our neighbors, our community. We made sure every neighbor knew they could call us. Here's our late hours night call. Like, we really made sure they were part of it. We had like a love thy neighbor policy where we made sure guests knew neighbors come before them, because our totem of excellence was neighbors, guests, owners, management, right? And that helps prioritize because neighbors didn't sign up for this, and we have to protect that. Our industry is, if you're a neighbor who just leaves a lockbox, or a manager leaves a lockbox on the door and does not answer neighbor issues, you're hurting the entire industry, because those few people are the people that go to the city and then ask them to change the rules. So so important that you show love and be hospitable to those neighbors. You can also tell them, hey, your family comes to town, we got a property next door, I'll give you a discount, right? There's a lot of things you could do to give them a little love as well. But also, our industry, the coolest thing I find reputation piece when we were actually going through 2018 legislation, we were sitting there next to Uber. We didn't have like Airbnb or VRBO. No one was there to support us, but like the Uber side of it, they were like, hey, we're going to lower drinking and driving. Great argument. I mean, I wish we had something that good. So a good friend of mine at the time is created a product called Noisewares. His name is David Krause. He does Rent Responsibly. He had some data that he gave to me or gave to us. And I was like, do I need some data to show that like what we do is great for the local economy, right? Because I knew that like, most of the money you go to the hotels leaves the city. And that was a huge, a great argument at city council. I would take people out, city council members, our head of zoning, head of livability, all that. I took them out for lunches and explained to them that, when people stay at our homes, they go and they want to live like a local. They have groups, they have higher check averages. They're really supporting those local areas. And man, was that the truth? It was awesome. So that's the thing our industry does so great. We really genuinely support local businesses, and we keep that money local more than the hotel industry does. And there's so much data behind this. But just I think that's like the one piece we have it's great, politically. And many more, of course. We're more travel friendly for people with special needs, families, kids, pets. So there's so many great things we accommodate to. We got published, best of a few times, and then really just partnering with realtors is really good. We went and spoke in front of all the realtors, educated them on the ordinances. Kind of like now we're sharing a lot of our stuff. Like we genuinely just want everyone to know so that like the industry is safe and everybody's good. So like with this case, it's like, hey, realtors, like you're telling people that this is what it makes, but you're adding accommodation taxes and cleaning fees in there. That's not correct. Owners don't take that money. So we need to make sure you're like properly doing this. And, most of the realtors were, of course, like, absolutely. Thank you for telling me. I didn't know, because they're treating it kind of like commercial real estate where you kind of back it out. But that kind of caused issues for our reputation of our business. Right. So we had to be that guard. And then educating those owners. I mean, I probably had 4 to 5 calls a day talking to owners about the ordinances. And, more than half those people couldn't legally short-term rent. But they would have bought a property and then had a property they couldn't short-term rent, and that would have we probably saved over 100 people from making that decision easily. So just that's that reputation piece, right? You're going out of your way to do things that isn't necessarily going to affect your bottom line, but there's that clout, there's that karma, and all that stuff is so real, right? It's why we always say, "Oh, small world, I can't believe that just happened." Well, it's because what comes around goes around. And your local reputation is your moat, right? You don't just win on Airbnb, you win in your community. And owners don't have the public presence that you have, right? So making sure product experience and empowerment is tight before focusing on reputation and marketing is the key to the path of legacy. And then from basically the reputation piece, this S is like very simple. So I brought it into 2 things: scale and success, right? When you get to a point, do you want to scale? Do you want to sell, right? Do you want to just be successful and be happy? Like maybe you're good at 120 properties. You got a small team, you got great homes, owners are easy to work with. As we grew, it didn't necessarily mean we got happier. I want this to really sync with everybody, right? You're making these decisions based off time that you're losing and you're putting into the business, right? So with the time you have with your family, time you have with your friends, these become very real things that you'll look back and value, right? So again, you have the time and you have the support system in your life to go and scale. Then with scale, that's what you do. With success, maybe just focus on keeping the homes, not like improving the homes, and just like keeping things really, really tight. And then you don't have to really be focused too much on scale. You kind of just dial back on the peer system. But with scale, you're going to have to bounce back and forth the entire time. You're going to constantly go between the peers, and every week, every day, you need to bounce between product to empowerment to experience to reputation. Once you've got it built out and you're a bigger company and you get to the S and you can make that decision, that's what you want to ask yourself. But we focus on scaling margins, not just volume, right? Profitable homes is a big portfolio, but the same systems that helped us serve 50 homes helped us serve 350 homes because they were built with intention. We use technology to eliminate that friction, not human connection, automate tasks, not relationships, Scale your culture through rigorous hiring. Choose character over convenience, heart over speed. It's another really good thing to think of. And then expand only when you can replicate your magic, not just your processes. Measure success by guest loyalty and team fulfillment, not just your occupancy rates. Okay. And when it came to the time for us to exit, our edge was clean books, great homes with deep homeowner relationships, an excellent guest experience, a team that truly cares to support each other while serving others and finds purpose in doing so, and a brand that locals love and tourists trust. StayDuvet is not Taylor, Quinn, or Silas's business. It's Charleston's, like vacation rental company. That's how we view it, right? And that's what, created a little bidding war for us. We had an amazing, buyer. They've been great. And, again, don't race the scale, build something worth scaling, and then all that growth will follow. But I'm gonna leave it there and pass it over to
Well said, man. Really did a good job of synthesizing our entire experience at StayDuvet, and turning it into awesome little nuggets and concepts that people I think can certainly wrap their minds around and hopefully apply to their business. I did notice a couple of questions that popped up. Mac, I'm not sure if you wanted to address maybe one or two of them, or I can just go ahead and kind of, simply put together how we would think of tasks and expenses and how they can be married together.
Yeah, yeah, why don't let's I'll keep compiling some of the questions and then let's get through these last two and then we can knock them all out. Does that work well for you, Quinn?
Yeah, definitely.
Cool.
All right. So again, appreciate everybody's time. I think Taylor did a really good job of kind of synthesizing again how we were able to, take the hardships of the daily of our business and really turn it into the juggernaut in our market that it became in a very quick period of time. But what I'm here to discuss specifically is, how task can really and could and should be the core of your business. So, task ownership. Everybody knows that everybody has a job to do at whatever company that you're involved with. Some people, unfortunately, take the mindset of being extremely siloed and operating in their own world, managing their own department. And sometimes they have, a vision in which if I get my stuff done, we're all in a good place. That was something that we would always cut off right at the knees at Duvet. We would always encourage and instill task collaboration. But you always need to make sure you have a platform that empowers you to collaborate amongst your tasks. So just because you have a task that's assigned by somebody or created, like Taylor mentioned earlier, getting the task completed and being able to report on that task is equally, if not even more important, especially when you start to bring in some of the accounting components of the management business. So task ownership and collaboration is the real takeaway is getting everybody on the same page about what worked, what didn't work, and how you can learn from something that might have started as a bad experience, but you can turn it into a good experience. The next part is going to be how expenses seemingly get tied to task. And the way that we like to think about this as a manager in a world where we largely operate off of service contracts, those contracts should and could do a good job of outlining exactly what everyone's commissions do and don't cover. So, speaking from experience, and I'm sure Taylor can echo this, there can be a considerable amount of gray area that we property managers have to navigate. Some of these examples: overkill with quotes and estimates, particularly pertaining to maintenance and work order requests on behalf of the homeowners. The infamous line of, let's just get one more quote in an effort to get the best deal possible that a homeowner might request of you or one of your managers is something that inevitably is a big time suck, and sometimes or ultimately turns into an I told you so type of moment. I'm sure we all have preferred vendors, but being nimble and really adapting to onboarding a new homeowner who has a specific plumber, electrician, or any other third-party vendor that they require you to work with. You always want to do your homeowner justice, but if they are putting you through the ringer and requiring you to get countless quotes just to ensure that they can save $100 here, $50 there, you kind of have to start to set a precedence with them and let them know that your time is valuable. And yes, you are operating in a world of commissions, but if you're going above and beyond, count your time and make sure that you bill your homeowner accordingly for that. Another great example is restocking of some of the consumables or other supplies that short-term rentals require, being the paper towels, the toilet paper, coffee filters, or any other kind of add-on that you boast at your properties. So, making sure that you're keeping those in your inventory, and then also, not only having an expense that's tied to it, but those are also revenue generating opportunities to have a small upsell, because you are at the end of the day trying to source these products, purchasing them, and then putting them in the home. So making sure you realize that that's an opportunity for you and your business as well is something that we want to make sure is a big takeaway from today. Lastly, we all host guests, and in leaning into what Taylor was preaching is he's providing a 5-star guest experience. You don't necessarily want to just offer those experiences or those concierge services to just your guests. Sometimes your homeowners put in those homeowner blocks where you're hosting a friend or a family member. And unfortunately, these guests are not technically paying guests. You aren't earning commissions off of that homeowner block or stay. Um, but they are sometimes, and I'm sure Taylor can back me up on this. Sometimes those friends or family members are the hardest guests to host, because not only are they trying to lean into whatever additional add-ons or experiences that you guys provide as a company and that you advertise, but generally speaking, that's when you're under the most scrutiny. You're under the biggest microscope of, hey, I just checked into your property and this doorknob is loose, or the AC in the master bedroom is not cooling to the ideal temperature that I have it set to. And that ultimately creates a little bit of hardship or frustration on behalf of the homeowner. And the homeowner comes to you either during or right after their stay, and they lean into you about, hey, this was, an important client, or this was my mother and my extended family that was staying with me this weekend, and they just didn't really have an awesome stay or an awesome experience. Let's have a conversation about it. So the bottom line is, just create a task for yourself. Track how much time it takes and build the case why this might come with an additional cost outside of your typical commissions outlined in your service contracts. Being able to report on task or task inefficiencies. Let's jump into that first and foremost. I mentioned earlier, 2 to 5% of annual gross rental revenue is kind of like the benchmark of what a manager experiences in any kind of spillage throughout aggregating all of their expenses and boiling it down to the reporting. So Topkey has made industry waves with what they've been able to introduce to the market to really automate that, getting it into the system, coding it properly, assigning it to the correct property. Because at the end of the day, untracked, owner stays, cleans, or, those wrongly coded expenses, guest reimbursements that might not be covered by insurance programs or resolution payouts via Airbnb. Those are massive operational misses. So really being able to create a paper trail, backtrack, and report on any inefficiencies to mitigate those as much as possible is of the utmost importance. Reporting and on those tasks and the expenses that are associated with those tasks. Lots of value can be realized when you're not operating out of a Franken system or a whole bunch of systems that are duct taped together. So when you realize everything being connected, linking tasks, bookings, related expenses that are ancillary or come after the guest checks in or after they depart, those linking all of that together really creates the full picture for you and your team, and most importantly, your homeowners. You can trace an expense back to the source, whether it was originated from a guest communication or one of the homeowners specifically made a request at your properties. You can host that in a whole slew of different, coding efforts, as far as it being a work order, guest concierge service, or anything in between. So when all of these elements are integrated, the story becomes a lot more clear. And lastly, streamline payouts and locked in financials. So just again, the more that you stay on top of all of your expenses and you marry it to some sort of task that your team is getting completed, it trickles down to all the reports. So again, having it all under one hood and trickling down to the report section specifically is going to save your team a lot of time and headache on a daily, weekly, monthly, and annual basis. Now, dialing in those expenses, marrying them to the tasks is all well and good, but at the end of the day, you need the income and the expenses in order to tell the whole story, right? So at Duvet and with the product that we built at Feather, being dialed into your revenue management and the income that's coming in, that's going to bear the brunt of a lot of those expenses is of the utmost importance. And again, it allows you to move a lot more quickly, act on decision making or investments a lot more tried, true, and sound. So just being able to very quickly analyze income versus expenses from a business decision perspective is of the utmost importance. But also, it also should allow you to lean into faster homeowner acquisition. So when you have a homeowner who's never been introduced to the short-term rental game and naturally comes to you and says, I'm thinking of buying a property, I got one in mind. Can you give me the revenue projections for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath that's in this market that hosts these amenities? It's all well and good to be able to produce what that income might look like for them, but take it a step further and be able to actually help them understand and digest the expenses that are associated with generating that revenue. We cannot stress that enough, that everybody sees the opportunity to have a cash generating asset, but really making sure that you're educating them and you can very clearly and soundly report on the expenses it's going to take in order to justify that revenue is how Taylor and I were able to create a lot of value for our homeowners right off the rip and allowed us to lean into faster homeowner acquisition and longer homeowner retention.
Great stuff, Quinn. Taylor, awesome work on the peers. Gang, I know we're coming close on time, so I want to make sure we get to some of these questions. I think Taylor, you answered one, but I'm gonna, put it out there if you want to articulate for the rest of the groups that came through directly. And I think it's a great question. When you were scaling Duvet, what were the earliest warning signs that your systems couldn't support more growth? And what is the one thing you would fix earlier if you were doing it all over again? I do
So
love that.
Quinn, that's a great question. Quinn will agree with me on this. Like him and I try to be perfectionists a lot. We're like, oh no, one thing happened. We got to change everything because of this one time something happened. We did
Guilty.
that so many times, and I'm like, dang, now we have another issue over here because we just it happened once. So it's really important to measure how often that issue actually is happening, but have proactive ways to prevent it from getting worse. But just be careful, like switching your SOPs too much because you'll find yourself kind of going in circles. Not holding owners more accountable to the product and just taking all the added stress due to the lack of being able to reinvest back into their homes. It's so important, and that's why I have product being the first thing on the peer system. Also, not letting go of people on your team that don't row with the rest of the team and or talk negatively about guests or owners. Right? That toxicity it spreads if you have someone on your team just talking badly about guests or owners. The team's kind of like, why are we doing this? So
Infectious.
it is, and it's subconscious for people.
Mhm.
And then you just let them go. It's okay. There's another boat out there for them. There always is. So focusing too much on what competitors are also saying or the noise, when reality is it's just a distraction. Like just because you heard something doesn't mean it's true, right? There's their story, his story, and then the truth, right? There's like always, that. So keep that in mind. Just focus on those guests, those owners, those neighbors, and your team. And I don't know, I could go on, but I feel like those are some that came off the top of my head.
I do.
Mac, I saw a
Yeah.
good one about Taylor's comment of trying to get all king beds throughout the property.
Yeah.
We've all experienced the cheap homeowners at times, and it looks like somebody poses a really good question about how might you approach that homeowner about either the reviews or the level of investment they need to make to better their property.
Yeah, in the industry, we got stuff like Host GPO and other stuff. Helix offers 50% off. So if you go to the owner and say, "Hey, not only can you write this off, but you get 50% off because of me," kind of puts it
Mhm.
in their court. They're kind of like, "Oh man, yeah, 50% off is pretty good." And if you do that, get the midnight mattress because that's side and back sleepers. There's more side and
Mhm.
back sleepers than there are stomach sleepers.
But also, just look amongst your other inventory. Compare that, let's just say it's that, go back to that 3 bedroom, 2 bath example. And one has the king beds and one doesn't. Just quite simply sit them down and show them exactly the larger booking window that one that boasts the king bed is probably tooting. The higher average daily rate, the occupancy, and anything else that's revenue management related. I'd imagine you have a better case to make that the one with the king beds probably sees a considerable amount more bookings, and maybe you get to charge a bit of a premium. So just put the facts right in front of them and let them know that, like, hey, listen, you make this small investment into your property. Here's X investment, and here's the Y return that you'll ultimately benefit off of. Acting on whatever suggestion that you're making, king beds or anything of the likes.
Yeah, that's really good. I think we used to always tell the owners like 23% of people like want king beds because they have them at home, or want a king bed because they don't have it at home. But that's really good too.
I love it. I love it. I think those are the main questions, gang. And I do want to turn it over to Darren here in just a second, but I do want to say, first of all, thanks, Darren, for allowing us to talk this whole time. And for anyone not aware of Feather, we're new to the scene. So we appreciate any opportunity to tell our story. And if you're a manager that's been struggling with anything in particular, our team is more than happy to carve out some time to speak with you. Not necessarily about what we're building, although we're happy to share with you what we're doing, but to help provide consultative solutions. This is where we're trying to lead and make a difference within the industry. So with that, Darren, I'd love to pass it back over to you. And again, thanks again for you and the Top Key team making time for us today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys. And you said new to the scene, but you guys have one of the uh, as you guys were saying, this whole story, Stay Duvet, it's one of the more interesting ones in the space. Obviously, very experienced in the space. But yeah, thank you guys for joining. For the audience, hope this was really valuable. I know that I've got a few really good takeaways that we're going to share with our customers just in terms of learnings. So yeah, thank you guys so much. Before we close out, just want to call out again. Contact info is here. If anyone has any questions, feel free reach out to them, reach out to us, connect with everybody on LinkedIn. And then, yeah, one last little plug for Top Key. So they've talked a lot about the financial side of that and how important it is, and in the Stay Duvet process and then getting acquired. That's really partially why we wanted to do this webinar, is because it ties in so much to Top Key, because we are helping people get more profitable, get a handle on that. So if you want to see how we're helping 220 plus property managers just to add profitability, feel free to reach out or take a look at our success stories at topkey.io/customers. Reach out to me, Darren at topkey.io, or if you just want to chat, ask any kind of questions. But yeah, with that, guys, thank you so much. And to the audience, thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you on the next one.